Hello everybody, that one Jolts here, and today I am looking at Pokemon types and how they work. But I'm not here alone. I'm with EmperorPuppydragon.
I exist.
Yes, you do. And JTVStar.
Hey, howdy, hey, fellas.
So, let's get started. So, water types. Starting off with weaknesses. They're weak against electric, since the minerals in water conduct electricity, and weak against grass because if you water a plant, it just grows. You're not going to kill it. But it's good against fire because obviously water has no oxygen, so it puts out fire. Good against rocks is rocks sink underwater, and good against ground because if hard dirt, I guess, gets wet, it would become mud. So it's a lot more soft. Now, electric types. Now, electric types are only essentially bad against one type. That's ground. Because you can't really get electricity through the ground without cables. Also, water, as we've gone over before, since the minerals in the water. And it's good against flying. I mean, it's good against water as well, but it's good against flying because if a bird in the sky got hit by electricity, it would be roasted and it would fall to the ground dead. So, yeah, that's why electricity is good against flying and water. Okay, next up is ice. Now, ice is weak against fire because obviously fire could melt ice, but it's also weak against fighting rock and steel because some people could punch ice into pieces, rocks could smash ice into pieces, and if you hit ice with a hammer, I think it would probably shatter into pieces. Now, ice is good against grass because it would make the grass too cold, so it would chill out and die. It's also good against ground because frozen ground is super slippy, so people would fall over on it. And it's good against flying because if a bird's wings are frozen, then it can't fly, it will fall to the ground and it will die. It's also good against dragon because dragons are said to be like cold-blooded animals, so they can't sustain themselves in the cold. So, yeah, that's why ice is good against all those types. Okay, well, you see, steel is good and bad against tons of types, because steel, well, it's bad against, say, ground, because the ground has, like, iron and those kind of minerals in it, and also lots of, I guess, buried treasure, like, made out of metal, would be buried in the ground. Steel is weak against fighting because a really buff guy could bend metal. I had a friend who once bent a spoon and snapped it in half. And it's also weak against fire because steel will eventually melt. And when doing so, it will become a useless hot glob, really. So that's why steel's bad against those. But it's good against ice because you could easily, again, smash ice with a hammer. It's good against rock since overall steel is way stronger than rock. And it's good against fairy because, you see, it's almost to represent hot irons. And they were a form of torture back then. And fairy said to be like all good stuff. So it would be bad against things that we used for torture. So that's steel type covered. Okay, and dark, because dark is bad against bugs, since bugs often live in dark, clammy places and come out, say, at night. It's bad against fairy because dark is said to be the evil side of things. And let's be honest, always, like in the movies, but a fight of good and bad, good always wins. Call fairy good and dark bad. And it's bad against fighting, since all fighting styles involve some sort of discipline, like some sort of way of fighting against the pain. If we call dark the pain, then say an advanced fighter would be able to handle all that because they know it. But dark is good against psychic because one of a main fear is fear of the dark, or what's in the dark. And dark is good against ghost because it said that ghosts' spirits have become restless, whereas dark... Okay, now for dragon types. You see, dragon types, starting off, is weak against fairy, because, again, say dragon seen as an evil monster, fairy seen as goodness almost. Goodness always prevails over evil. Dragon's good against dragon, because dragons are super powerful, and the only thing that could really stop a dragon would be another dragon with those levels of power. And also dragon is bad against ice, because dragons are cold-blooded, and if put in contact with ice for too long, they would freeze and die. I mean, like, dragon isn't super effective against tons of stuff, but it's good against lots of stuff. And again, it's good against itself because dragons are the only thing powerful enough to stop themselves. Okay, over to you, JTV.
Okay, so fairy is weak to poison because, well, it's a form of torture. Same of how it's weak to steel, because you could burn it alive with, like, one of those hot rods they use in the medieval times. But anyways, it's super effective against dragon, because dragon is kind of a form of evil, and then the fairy is the form of good, and good always prevails. Then it's also strong against fighting, because, well, it's kind of... You can't really physical contact on a fairy, unless it's weaponized, like maybe a sword or something. But also, the same with dragon, but with dark, it's good always prevails, so that's why it's super effective. Okay, now, psychic is weak to all ghost, bug, and dark, because they are the main fears, being afraid of the dark, afraid of ghosts and afraid of bugs, like how Misty is afraid of bugs in the anime. And also, it's super effective against fighting, because the famous phrase brain over brawn, and then also, because it's true, it's also super effective against poison, because in Japanese mythology, you can kind of prevent toxins with your brain. Okay. Now we're on to the fighting type. Fighting is weak to fairy, because like I said earlier, you can't really do physical contact on a fairy because magical powers. Also, it's weak to psychic, because like I said earlier as well, brain over brawn. Also, it's weak to flying, because you can't really punch a bird when it's flying above your head. It's also weak to ghost, because you can't really punch through, because you punch through a ghost. You can't harm it. But anyways, it's also weak. What? Okay. It's also strong against dark, because, well, warriors always have discipline, even when the enemy has some sort of underhanded tactics. Also, it's super effective against steel, because, like my friend said earlier, someone could just maybe bend a spoon in half, which is made of metal. It's also super effective against normal, because any martial arts master could just beat up a normal guy. That's the thing. Anyways, it's also super effective against ice, because you can punch ice if you're really skilled and it will shatter. And then also, it's super effective against rock because of the literal Pokemon move, Rock Smash. Brings out a rock from the ground, then you punch it to bits. Okay, now we have the poison type. That's the wrong app. Okay, so poison is weak against ground because most toxins have a liquid form. What kind of liquid on, like, earth? How does that work? Anyways, it's also weak to psychic, since, like I said earlier, in Japanese folklore, you can remove toxins with your brain power. Then it's also super effective against fairies because it's a form of torture, and fairies can't handle that. And then it's also super effective against grass because if you poison nature, it wilts over and dies. Okay, next up is the weak bug type, as everyone says. Anyways, it is weak to rock because you could crush a bug with a rock, but really it should be super effective since, well, immune if anything, because they live under rocks. But anyways, also it's weak to fire because if you put a magnifying glass over it, the sun's rays will burn it alive and it will die. And then also it's weak to flying because a bird could just come and eat it. It's also super effective against dark because, well, they live in dark places. They live under rocks, if anything. Also, they are super effective against psychic since bugs are one of the common fears. And also super effective against grass since they lay eggs in grass and eat grass. Okay, we are on the ground type now. Okay, then. Ground is weak to water because, like my friend said earlier, you could just make it wet, turn it into mud, and it's very vulnerable. But don't try and punch mud, it's really annoying. But moving on. It's also weak to ice because, well, you could freeze over ground, and it's also weak to grass since you could grow plants on the ground. Come on, how else? Now, it's also super effective against poison because, like I said earlier, if you have a liquid toxin, it's just going to be like putting Coca-Cola on the floor. A waste of time. But anyways, a steel and rock are also weak to ground because, well, you can find rocks and steel like underground. And that's where the ground is. But also, it's super effective against electric because, well, the only way to get electricity through the ground is with power cables. And why would there be a power cable type? Come on now. But anyways, the last one is super effective against fire because the only thing you can do to burn the ground is by using plants to burn. But we're not talking about the grass type, we're talking about the ground type. So you can't set the ground on fire. Okay, now passing over to EmperorPuppydragon.
Okay, so I'll be covering ghost type right now. And if a ghost attacks a ghost, then it's going to be super effective because ghosts can touch each other. Mind blown, right? Then we will move on to dark, and dark is super effective against ghost, and ghost is weak to dark. Because darkness is like a super evil, and ghost is like a lesser evil. So if something's stronger than the other thing, I think you can see where I'm going with this. Now, ghost is also weak to ghost, because ghost is super effective against ghost, and it's this whole like loophole thing. Oh, and ghosts are super effective against psychic, as well as resistant to them, as like ghosts are one of the main three fears, as well as bugs and the dark, therefore being stronger against psychic. Then we move on to fighting type, which, like, if you punch a ghost, your fist is passes through it. Okay, so now we'll be covering rock type. And the first one on the list is, like most types, rock is resistant to rock. Anyways, grass is super effective against rock and resistant to it. Because, like, grass and other plants can grow on rocks and, like, put their roots into it and smash them open. Then, steel is super effective against rock because it's like stronger than rock. So if you smash a rock with steel, the rock will blow up. I think. And then fighting is super effective against rock because you can punch a rock if you're really buff and the rock will split open. Then water is super effective against rock because first, rocks will sink in water, and second, water can erode rocks. Bugs are weak to rock, which is surprising as they literally live in rocks. Dark type argument. And so basically, bug can get smashed by a rock. Wow. Then rock is super effective against ice because I'm pretty sure if you drop a boulder on the little piece of ice, then the boulder will smash the ice. Next, we're moving on to flying because people who are mean throw rocks at pigeons. Then rock is resistant to fire because if you cover a fire with rocks, then the fire won't be there anymore, I guess. Okay, so now we'll be talking about grass. Before we start, small disclaimer. Why is floor just not a grass type? Just like it's made of flowers. What the hell? Anyways, now we're poison because poison poisons the grass. Wow.
Really? Wow.
I know, right?
I never knew that.
Anyways, now we move on to bugs because bugs can eat the grass and lay their eggs. So they like own the grass. Next we have ice, which can freeze grass and make it die. Next we have fire, which can burn grass and make it die. Next we have birds, which can like flying type, which can they like make their nests out of twigs, which is foliage and grass. Plus they can like blow away grass when they fly. Next we have water, because if you throw water at a plant, it just grows. So it's next we have ground, which grass is super effective against because it literally grows inside of it. And next we have rock, and grass is super effective against it because it can grow on it and inside of it and crack it open. Okay, now we'll be covering normal, which is pretty overall a normal type. Whoa. So anyways, if a guy's walking down the street and this random guy who knows karate just jumps out from nowhere and kicks him, then it's not going to go very well. No. Because that's why fighting is good against normal. And that's that! Oh, yeah, that's that. Normal is very normal. Okay, so now we'll be covering the fire type, which is fire. So first, it's like weak to water because you can extinguish fire with water. It's also weak to ground because if you cover up fire with dirt, then it's not there anymore. Also, it's weak to rocks for the exact same reason. Also, small thing, shouldn't flying have some sort of interaction with fire? Because like it could fan it and make it bigger, or fan it and make it disappear. Then fire can burn up grass and make it die. Fire is also good against ice because it can melt it and make it die. Also, technically, fire shouldn't be anything towards ice because it can melt it and turn it into water, which it's weak to. It's also strong against steel, because it can burn it and make it die. No, I'm just kidding. But it can burn it down to like small parts and just a glob of globbiness. It's also super effective against bug because if you're a jerk, you can use a magnifying glass to burn a bug in the sunlight, and the bug's just like, oh look, it's getting a bit hot in here. Wait, no! Okay, so now I'll be covering the flying type, which is just bulbs and air. Anyways, so if a bird flies through a thunderstorm, then it dies. I'm having fried Starly tonight.
No need for Nando's.
But Nando's is amazing!
Anyways, birds are weak to rock types because if you kick a rock at a bird, the bird doesn't like it. Wow. Birds are also weak to ice because if you freeze their wings, then they can't fly, and that's like their whole thing. So if you take away that, then they're just not flying types anymore. Birds are super effective against bugs because birds eat bugs. No explanation needed. Birds are resistant to fighting and super effective against it because, like, unless you're a certain bold person, you can't hit birds whilst they're flying through the air. And also, birds are super effective against grass because they like make their nests out of twigs and stuff.
Okay, guys, that was all for this video. So it's bye from me, and it's bye from EmperorPuppydragon JTV.
Goodbye, fellas!
Bye bye.